Hello world, this is Shruti Pandey, and today I have with me the founder and CEO of Digy4, Parasar Saha. So it's really an overwhelming experience right now for me to have him on the podcast, and I'm very happy, sir, that you gave me your time today. Thank you so much for being on Itishruti.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure, and really excited to be on your show. I always wanted to kind of have that chat on your show. So definitely, it's a pleasure for me.
I mean, we have chatted before, and I know as a matter of fact, you or your company also has a podcast or your channel of your own. So I think I was just waiting for the time to pass and get that opportunity when I can have you on the podcast. So just glad that I can host you on this.
Absolutely, yes, we do have our podcast, but always being in different forums definitely helps because you get to talk to many people. I would listen to their questions and know how they look about the things, right? So always glad to be in the different forums.
You're too kind. You're too kind. I have created three questions for you, and I hope it would look and sound a little different compared to what you have been on conferences and things before. So, can I start with my questions if that's okay with you?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Shruti.
Okay.
Yes.
So my first question is, since you also come from a testing background and the IT hustle and testing, like you have really great experience in testing yourself, and then you moved on to starting your own venture. My first, consider these questions as starter points really for you to talk. What led you to starting your own venture?
That's a great question. And it's a great opening for this conversation. See, everything links back to who I am, where I come from in the career perspective, right? Um, to just give you a background, right? I started in India at one point. I moved to US. I was in East Coast where working with financial organizations, understand what is the need of quality there, how critical quality is for financial institutions. Like when you work with East Coast with banks and stuff, like you understand that piece, then at one point I moved to West Coast where I saw how the technology is getting built, like when the in their nation state, how they are kind of like changing the game of quality, changing the game of technology up there in the West Coast in the Silicon Valley. Had the opportunity to work with some of the best leaders and the minds in the industry in the Silicon Valley. Then kind of at some point I moved to Canada, right? And my whole journey was kind of see the need, see how people are kind of like fitting into that need and implement that somewhere, right? And figure out the success, right? And Canada gave me that opportunity, right? Okay. And at one point, I became the head of quality engineering COE of one of the biggest airlines up here. Implemented some of these kind of the things that I have learned in my path of career and saw there was a success, and it actually pivoted our organization at a large scale. So that's the point I realized that, maybe it's something if it can change one organization, can probably change multiple organization. It can influence the industry, take it in a different route, right? And that's the thing that actually inspired me to be a founder and an entrepreneur. Basically, like solving the problem of the industry, solving what is there, and kind of giving back to the industry, what I can have learned over the time.
I don't know why I feel as a tester myself that problem solving comes very naturally to most of the testers. So, I mean, did anything particularly spark your curiosity? Like, I need to find a solution for one particular thing, or you found many gaps during your career and experiences? Just trying to understand for myself, really, now. I'm getting greedy.
Exactly, that's a great question, right? What I think is it all comes from the necessity is the birth of the invention, right? So what happens is you see this today's industry, testers are trying to test the code that is getting built, the requirements that is getting formed, the code that is getting built. Now, if you see the other side of the house, right, where the requirements and the development is happening, they're fast shifting into like pre-packaged software. Like now, there's this Salesforce of the world, there is this like SAP of the world, which is in all these big enterprises, right? And pre-packaged software is also getting into this like all the startups as well, right? Now, what happens in pre-packaged software is like a lot of these components are already built in. All you do is just configure what you need for yourself, right? And the prepackaged software is nowadays getting delivered as a SaaS. So basically, what has happened is the whole process of development has reduced significantly, significantly. Now, how would you catch up with that if you have to build the software yourself? That's one of the challenge that we face, right? And because I manage large teams, like in scale of like 300, 400 people, and they used to come back and say like how do I keep up? They only do a piece of the puzzle, and then they have a ready to use software, right? And I have to build everything from scratch, and that bothered me. Think about it, it is like you're left in an open field and it starts raining, and you don't have any umbrella or something, and the field is big, so you're running as fast as you can, but you will get wet because you don't have a protective thing, right? And the protective thing is your technology, right? That is your car, that is your cycle, that can move you fast around, right? That is what I wanted to build. And with this cloud coming in, right, everybody is kind of like getting into cloud. With the dev and devops, they have a ready to use cloud. Even the testing try to use cloud, there's not a ready to use cloud. You have to build up every pieces. So the whole piece of this SaaS prepackaged software cloud is kind of like always pushing me to think like what we can build as a technology that we can give back to this kind of like tester community, that they can have their car to move out of this field when the rain starts happening.
You remind me of, when I was testing at different companies, like you were sharing your experience. You really took me back to all of that. And I can't name many places, it would get me into trouble, but I totally echo your sentiments. It's not easy. And what a great example of being on a field, and if it starts raining and what do you do? It totally makes sense, and reminded me of so many things that happen in a tester's life day in, day out. While you chose a very difficult part, I asked this question because many people out there might be working on site or might have a good designation by now or whatever their things may be. uh, I mean, I think this question is important for them to understand what really motivated you to get started, and how, if they feel like getting onto something, getting somewhere, they can achieve that success for themselves too. But uh, I understand this journey is not easy of entrepreneurship. I want to understand from you the second aspect of it. So you decided to start something of your own. How easy or difficult was it for you to get your customers, or how did you get your first 10 customers after you started your venture?
you know the, I said like the questions that you're asking, like it also resonate, like I'm in also following you, like how you actually like started your journey, and kind of like getting in the podcast, doing yourself, like giving a voice to the community, right? Okay, that really helps, right? That stuff. Now, a part of it is like when you're doing as an individual and when you're doing as an institution, there is a difference. There's a difference that no matter who you are as an individual, you don't carry all this kind of value that you did as an institution, right? The institution, when you starts with zero. So what it starts with is your brand value, right? What is your network, your trust in what people have, and you slowly transition this trust into like the organization, right? So it always starts with that close circle of people, your network that you have worked with, and they trusted you, that you can deliver. You are their kind of like the person that they can go to. So the first 10 customer, to your question, is like always going to come from that network. Every founder does this, right? No matter who you are, you will always try to find that, knock the door to the people that you know, take that trust, build that trust. At the same time, when you get your first customer, work with them very closely to create their success story, and take that success story into a next success story, right? Because they are your biggest marketers, right? Every success story, every happy client will bring another client for you.
Wow. How beautifully put, and you took me by surprise when you mentioned something about me. I wasn't very prepared for that, but it totally makes sense. And until unless we contribute to the success of our clients, be it if we were working at a bank or MNC, or if we are starting something of our own, we cannot flourish. I think the whole ecosystem of companies or corporate is based on this innate nature that if you see others grow, you will grow. But
Yeah.
very few people understand that. So I'm really so happy because you mentioned it so beautifully. Uh, it's really surprising, and it's really I'm not finding the proper words to express myself right now. Let me put it that way. But given the fact, continuing from where you started off the second answer, now that I have started my journey of trying something of my own, and when you started your first answer also, it reminded me of why I chose, switching to startups and becoming a solution architect despite being a testing person or whatever. uh, I mean, there's so many parallel in your story and my story that this is becoming a very nice playbook for me also, listening to you. And my final question for you is really about, now I understand that it's so difficult when you start something of your own, in every aspect. I mean, the work life balance which we uh, crib as an employee, like, it goes to a whole another level when you are starting something of your own, right? Every day is a work day. It's not like Saturday Sunday shutti hai. So it's not easy when you're starting something of your own. I want to understand from you what keeps you going at this entrepreneurship thing, understanding that it's not easy job, or probably if it's easy for you, let me know how you make it easy for yourself.
I think that's an excellent point, right? You're also like in a journey, right? And you understand that this is going to be a tough journey. I was one day listening to the CEO of Nvidia, right? And he was mentioning, like, I get ashamed many times, like, for certain things, but that's the spirit of an entrepreneur, right? You should be able, brave enough to take those challenges. And you're taking those challenges, like, because of a fundamental reason. The fundamental reason of an entrepreneur is you wanted to solve a bigger problem. You could have done in an employee. You could have done in an employee. You wanted to expand your horizon, right? You wanted to expand your horizon. Not one employee, not one team, not one organization. Can I help the industry, right? And that's the fundamental why you became a thing, and that's exactly what keeps you running, right? So if I look at the journey of Digy4, right, when we started the journey, and Digy4 has an interesting meaning, right? A lot of people asked why we have this later four, and I didn't really talk about it like a forum like this. I think this is the first time I'm kind of mentioning this Digi4, and the four comes with, there are four pillars. Digi means digital. Okay, this is digital, and there are four pillars of digital. One is automation. When you get too much automation, you got to move into a kind of a infrastructure which is scalable, which is cloud. Then when you have cloud and automation, you start gathering a lot of data. That's the third pillar. And when you have all these things together, then you start thinking of AI, right? So those are the four pillars of digitization, and we touch all the four pillars, like, so that's why we are Digi4. And that's exactly your point, is like, you got to solve one problem, and then you find out what's the route to the next thing, right? So you solve the next problem, and you keep going at the next problem. So we started with, like, a reporting platform, right? And we solved the problem. We have the best reporting platform there. Now we're studying it, like, how do I take it to the continuous testing, like, QA ops. Now we are taking, building the whole cloud. We started with the whole journey of, like, building the whole testing cloud. Now, testing cloud is not going to be the only solution when GPTs and things are really moving fast. And then that's what you put the AI on the top of it. And we are building the AI really fast and building the LLM of the testing. Like, I don't know how many companies are building the testing LLM from scratch. We are building that piece. And that's the spirit of, like, solving it, giving back to people that they can solve their day-to-day thing. And it's a day-to-day thing. Like, you open up an app, and if it crashes, it's a common man problem. How do you solve that common man problem? Like when things get tough and they cannot call to a customer care, they don't these days don't. And that helps the problem. And if you can help that through your journey, one by step, get to that common man problem, solve that, that's the biggest thing, and that pushes me to keep going as an entrepreneur.
First of all, I'm honored that you shared the meaning of Digy4 first time anywhere, and that digital platform is mine. I'm really honored. And I think again you take me back to the square one every time. You don't let me forget my roots with all the answers you gave. I have to call it out loud because you know, even as a tester from my first company, if I was working for my client, I was still working for the end customer whose app I was actually working on. And as you rightly mentioned, if that app crashes, it's that layman's problem and somebody needs to fix it. It doesn't matter if I did it for a company, for a client, for a project, for a team, or I'm trying to achieve that for a larger goal. Seriously, this is what is called as, sticking to your basics, and every all the answers of your were like to the point, coming to like, do you remember where you come from? Do you remember what we need to solve, and not overcomplicate things? This is so beautiful, and I don't know if I should be using this word, but without any BS. Thank you. Thank you for calling a spade and telling it upfront.
It is being grounded, right? Because more you are grounded to your, like, your situations and the whole community situation, like what happens is, like, you can solve problem. If you're just doing the things on the high level, what happens is, like, you just know the surface of it, right? I can tell you one example. Like, one day I was kind of like, trying to catch a flight, and I was using an app to kind of like, book my cab, and that app keep on crashing. And I was kind of on the risk of missing the flight because I cannot call the customer care. I didn't have the time to call a cab company to come up, right? So I was under risk. So that made me think, right? What can I do better? Like, what can I do that, okay, that can solve? Like me, there are so many people in the world, I mean, that can. And it is not the business owner who created that app or something. They missed something, but they didn't had the tool and the things that can help them to deliver better. And my journey is to kind of like, give that thing back. Okay, can I build something that people can do things better?
I feel like asking you this thing. Please don't get me wrong. It's with utter respect that I'm asking you. What do you take in breakfast for positivity? Seriously, I need to have that too. What do you take in breakfast for positivity? Seriously.
And that's a very unique question. I never got that question anywhere. Like, a lot of forums have been
I don't
coming.
remember asking this to ever, but I don't know why I felt like asking this to you. And I need to
I don't know. I don't know. Like, the morning is the part of the day when you're in a hallucination, right? Basically, like, you wake up and you don't know what's going to happen. Like, you feel like, what's the next day going to be, right? And I love to keep it very simple. Like, if you follow me, like, you'll see, like, I go to the same stores, order the same thing, right? I want to keep it simple, like, in the simplest way. I mean, that's where, like, I keep it simple to the oats and stuff, and keep going, because I need to get past that hallucination with a simple solution, get through the day, and take a positive direction and get to the next day. Build one day at a time.
Right. So when I get into that Alice in the Wonderland situation of mine, which you call hallucination, I'm going to play this part and listen to it again. Seriously, thank
I
you.
think your questions are very kind of like, like very interesting, insightful, right? I'm sure like it comes from a lot of your kind of experience and your journey as well. I'm glad to kind of like, share like my perspective of it. Like, I hope I was able to give like, how I think about those. Let's say.
Just being yourself is the best thing you could do for me. Seriously, that is the best thing you could do. So I'm actually grateful, sir. Do you think I missed asking you anything, or you felt like you wanted to share something? If there's anything, please. This is your your journey. This is your show. This is celebrating you.
I think it's celebrating us, right? Us as like, it's a communication. I always feel, even when we are building a solution, right? We're building as a company, we are building a solution. It's not just like, we are building a solution to sell. We are building a solution to solve. So it's a common journey where the customer and somebody who is delivering is celebrating the success. So it's a mutual journey. And more you understand that mutual journey, you're going to be liked by the industry, the community, and the stuff. Like that's how you grow. That's what I think. Like, that's my perspective. Now, one of the thing, like especially coming from testing, right? What I have seen, we need more technology, right? Definitely, we need more technology to do. A lot of times we get caught up in conversation strategies and stuff, right? But what really moves the needle these days is technology. If you can give out of box technology, then that moves the thing. Instead of like, I like to see this is, instead of working around testing, can you focus on testing? Because sometimes what happens in the business, when you go to a business person, right? Okay, and they pay for your testing thing, right? So they look at what you are delivering them, articulating that business value. More you can articulate that business value, give back to them, they will be willing to kind of invest in you. So see how you can improve quality rather than kind of like, working around quality, and look at things that you can get from the industry to build quality from there.
Something weird happened right now with me because this doesn't happen, and our thoughts are so much in sync and tandem because I see so many people just building to sell and solve, and it made me wonder if maybe couple of years back you and I would have been on the same team. It would have been a killer one because yeah, it's very difficult to find people who match your wavelength, right? Or what you're thinking and how you're thinking and trying to solve something. It's so much in tandem that it really made me wonder if we were if had we been on the same team. Oh my god, it would have been amazing. But
I
anyway,
think the journey is long, so definitely, like, there is always that opportunity. The thing is, like, when we built like Digi4, like we were always looking at, not just building something like, our organization from outside out, right? Okay, we were building it inside out, right? Okay, people who have worked in testing, like who have worked at enterprise level testing, understand how a business organization want to use quality. That's the more important part. And then augmenting that with people who can drive those technical innovations, who can architect the next level of innovation and bring technology to the like the larger scale and implement large scale implementation. That was the whole purpose of like to build how Digi4 should be.
let me ask you a parting thought. I mean, I can talk endlessly with you, I feel, but let me have a parting thought with you here now. Do you have any advice for people who are listening to you? Anything in general?
I think like the most important piece is like think about when you are doing something, what you are giving to the people who you are working for. Like somebody is kind of like expecting something from you, like that business, not to get hold up in the technical part always. Like when you are having that conversation, see it from the user perspective, right? What the value you are giving to the user, and more you can tell that story, and then you can actually like they feel kind of like championed by what you have built. If you contribute to their success, they will contribute to your success. And that's the whole like mantra I believe in.
That is an amazing mantra to live by, I think. Really, it's a beautiful one. So simple and yet to the point and solving something rather than creating some problem in an already problem existing world. This makes a lot of sense, and I really feel so happy and humbled right now by this conversation, sir, with you. I can't thank you enough. Seriously, thank you for being on this show.
No, it was a pleasure, like, and thanks for the opportunity. I'm really kind of like glad to be here, like, absolutely, like, hope this in this the conversations helped in like the to you and the community to understand what we are doing, why we are doing, and where we are.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.